Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to objectively unpack an ancient text, but we're doing it through a really fascinating modern psychological lens, specifically leadership theory. We'll be diving into a historical character study drawn right from the Book of Mormon. But we aren't just analyzing this as a historical or religious record. Instead, we're going to look at it as an absolute masterclass in organizational psychology and human behavior.
So, what actually separates a truly great leader from a dangerous dictator? It's a huge question, right? Well, let's dive into it by examining two deeply contrasting figures from the text, the Nephite military commander, Captain Moroni, and the dissenting usurper, Amalickiah. As we look at these two men side by side, we're going to see how these ancient events map perfectly onto the exact frameworks that modern psychologists use today to understand how leaders build up or, frankly, completely destroy societies.
We're going to chart our analysis through 6 quick stages today. First, a nation in crisis, then Amalickiah's reign of terror, the psychology of pseudo-leadership, Moroni's authentic leadership, the title of liberty, and finally, some modern leadership lessons. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, a nation in crisis, and kind of set the stage here. The historical context here is absolutely crucial. According to the text, around 73 BC, the Nephite civilization had just recently shifted from a monarchy to a system of judges. Basically, it was a move toward a free, representative government. But the foundation of that newly established liberty gets severely threatened. A large, strong, and incredibly persuasive man named Amalickiah emerges on the scene. He taps right into this vein of political dissension, using intense anger and flattery to completely divide the people. And his ultimate goal? He wants to destroy the system of judges, return the entire nation to a monarchy, and install himself as king with absolute power. Which brings us to Section 2, Amalickiah's reign of terror, and his absolute hunger for control. Amalickiah's rise reads quite literally like a true crime thriller. He methodically abandons his own followers and orchestrates this wild series of betrayals and assassinations just to achieve his selfish aims. Talk about an aggressive way to climb the corporate ladder. When his initial plan to become king fails, he literally leaves his own loyal followers behind to be captured, and he just flees to the rival Lamanite nation. Then, through pure deception, he somehow gets himself appointed as second in command of their army. Next up, he has his commanding officer, Lahonti, poisoned by degrees. Step by step, he climbs that ladder, eventually having his own servants stab the Lamanite king in the heart. And then he turns around, feigns grief, and actually marries the widowed queen. It's just a shocking, highly calculated usurpation of power. That leads us straight into Section 3, the pseudo-transformational leader, and the idea of weaponized charisma. Now, this is exactly where modern leadership theory gives us a perfect framework to understand what Amalickiah was really doing. The crucial point here is that charisma can absolutely be weaponized. We usually think of charismatic leaders as inherently good, right? But scholars actually identify an evil twin to the authentic transformational leader. They call it the pseudo-transformational leader. See, while an authentic leader inspires and empowers people from a strong moral foundation, the pseudo-transformational leader uses that exact same charismatic influence to manipulate people for totally selfish, amoral ends. This perfectly illustrates how Amalickiah utilized the twisted counterpart of what psychologists call the 4 I's. These are the core pillars used to define transformational leadership. So instead of genuine idealized influence, he's motivated entirely by self-interest. For inspirational motivation, well, he uses propaganda and literally stirs up hatred from towers just to incite his people to war. Instead of intellectual stimulation, he suppresses dissent, relies on blind anger, and uses outright fraud. And as for individual consideration, he views people as completely disposable tools. We saw how quickly he abandoned his own followers the second things got tough. He plunged entire nations into a devastating war entirely to stroke his own ego. Moving on to Section 4. Moroni's transformational leadership and Captain Moroni's defense. To really see the perfect contrast here, enter our protagonist, the chief captain of the Nephite armies, Captain Moroni. He was appointed by the voice of the people, not through fraud or trickery, and he stands in this narrative as the direct, undeniable mirror image to Amalickiah's tyranny. Think about it. Where Amalickiah seeks to conquer and enslave, Moroni's entire mission is strictly to protect and defend. So here we see true transformational leadership in action through those exact same 4 I's. Moroni exerts idealized influence by maintaining these exceptionally high moral standards and acting as a courageous exemplar for his people. He uses inspirational motivation to communicate a shared, really appealing vision of peace and liberty. For intellectual stimulation, the guy literally changes the way war is fought in his era. He equips his soldiers with novel, thick armor and turns previously weak cities into massive fortified strongholds. And crucially, for individual consideration, the text actually notes that he did not delight in bloodshed. He prioritized the actual physical and spiritual well-being of his citizens above absolutely everything else. The text just presents this incredibly stark dichotomy. On one side, we've got a man who sought bondage, obtained his power by fraud, incited absolute hatred, and cared nothing for the blood of his own people. And contrasting him, we have a man who sought liberty, was democratically appointed, rallied his people to righteousness, and labored tirelessly for their welfare. Moroni sought to preserve the very foundation of liberty, while Amalickiah actively worked to tear it down. All right, Section 5, the title of liberty and the war of ideas. Because Amalickiah was out there utilizing this really intense propaganda, Moroni quickly realized he couldn't just fight with swords anymore. He had a full-blown war of ideas on his hands, and he needed a powerful symbol to unify his people. The text describes this highly dramatic moment where Moroni actually tears his own coat. He turns a simple piece of ruined clothing into a profound emblem. Talk about some intense DIY, right? But it created a rallying cry that cut straight through all the noise and confusion. He wrote 5 very specific things on this makeshift standard. By codifying these 5 elements, God, religion, freedom, peace, and family, he masterfully utilized inspirational motivation. He basically took this massive abstract concept of liberty and tied it directly to the everyday things his people loved most. He gave them a crystal clear, unifying vision to focus the entire group on collective, righteous action. He hoisted this standard, which he called the title of liberty, and the text says he wrote, "In memory of our God, our religion and freedom, and our peace, our wives, and our children." You know, this wasn't just some military banner to march under. It literally became a covenant. The people came running in their armor, tearing their own garments as a token of recommitment. It sparked this massive grassroots movement among the people to not forsake their beliefs, and it fundamentally shifted the momentum entirely away from Amalickiah's divisive rhetoric. Which brings us to our final section, number 6, modern leadership lessons and fortifying our lives. So you might be wondering, why does this all matter to you and me today? Well, the ancient strategies they used to defend against Amalickiah's armies actually hold some incredibly relevant lessons for navigating our own modern challenges. Just look at how Moroni operated. He strengthened his weakest spots first. He prepared in ways the enemy had literally never seen before. He turned his weakest cities into absolute strongholds. And critically, he didn't stop preparing even after he won a battle. Just as Moroni fortified his physical cities with these unprecedented defenses, we're invited to build up our own spiritual, mental, and emotional fortifications. It's all about protecting our own peace and well-being from the negative influences around us. The source text summarizes Moroni's impact with this really powerful statement. If all men had been and were and ever would be like unto Moroni, behold, the very powers of hell would have been shaken forever. It makes it perfectly clear that authentic, transformational leadership, the kind rooted in morality, individual consideration, and a genuine defense of liberty, has the power to permanently disrupt evil and oppression. It's pretty much the ultimate antidote to the Amalickiahs of the world. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to apply to your own life. You might not be commanding an ancient army, but you are absolutely the leader of your own life and your own circle of influence. So, which of your core values needs defending today? Where are your weak spots that need fortifying? And how will you step up as an authentic, transformational leader and hoist your own title of liberty in your community? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. Stay curious and keep learning.